The space station Ariadne 9 drifted in eternal silence above a blue-green gas giant called Hylan. Suspended in orbit, it hummed softly with a rhythm only sensitive machines could hear. A gentle lullaby of magnetic waves and pulsing energy fields filled the corridors, soothing to the few inhabitants who still walked its circular halls. Kael had lived aboard Ariadne 9 for 3 standard years. He was a custodian of the Starlight Archives, a library so ancient, no one remembered who built it. Each glowing crystal stored within held not just information, but memories, thoughts and sensations encoded in starlight. His routine was as quiet as the void. He rose each morning to the sound of soft chimes, sipped synthetic tea while gazing at the swirling clouds of Hylan below, and made his way to the central archive chamber. It was a domed space, ringed with shelves that glimmered in soft blues and golds. In the center floated the memory loom, a device that could play any crystal as an immersive dream. Kael's work was simple: maintain the loom, dust the shelves, occasionally guide a traveler who arrived seeking knowledge. But those visitors were rare now. The stars had grown quiet. Tonight, as Kael activated the loom to test a newly stabilized memory crystal, something unusual occurred. The crystal pulsed green, a color the loom had never displayed. A gentle hum filled the air, then words, whispered not into his ears, but directly into his thoughts. The key drifts between stars. Find the waking song. Kael frowned and glanced at the loom. The crystal spun slowly, shedding tiny sparks of light. "Who spoke?" he asked aloud. The room remained still. He leaned closer. The crystal pulsed again. Then, just as suddenly, the loom shut down. Kael stood in the silence, heart steady but curious. The archives never spoke. They remembered. They showed. But this was something new. And so began Kael's gentle unraveling of the quiet mystery that would take him far from Ariadne 9. Through forgotten systems, silent worlds, and floating cities, in search of the waking song. Kael couldn't sleep. The whisper from the crystal circled his thoughts like a small moon in orbit, silent, persistent. He sat at the edge of his bunk, a cup of lukewarm synth tea cradled in his palms, eyes half-lidded as the station lights dimmed to their nocturnal hue, soft lavender, like twilight through fog. He tapped the edge of his datapad and spoke gently. Log entry, personal, Ariadne 9, cycle 1052, 4th rotation. Anomaly recorded. A memory crystal responded. But it spoke, or seemed to. Green pulse, previously unrecorded. Message delivered through internal cognition channel. No distortion, no system error. He paused, thinking. Message content. The key drifts between stars. Find the waking song. He ended the log and let the datapad go dark. The cat-like cleaning drone. He called her really, word passed, dusting the corners of the ceiling. She chirped once and darted back into the ductwork. Kael stood and made his way slowly back to the central chamber. The memory loom sat quietly in its place, surrounded by the gleam of the archive's curved shelves. Crystals shimmered in soft blues, purples, and silvers, each one the silent fragment of a life lived somewhere far away, sometime long ago. He approached the green crystal once more. It now hovered dimly above the pedestal, faint and still. He didn't touch it. Not yet. Instead, he initiated a passive scan. The results returned in quiet pulses on the display screen beside the loom. Crystal origin, unknown. Signal pattern, harmonic resonance, unstable. Temporal imprint, fragmented. Directive status, incomplete. Incomplete. He sat on the cushion near the loom, folding his legs and listening to the silence. That's when he heard the signal again. Not words this time, but a tone. Faint, nearly imperceptible. A kind of melodic hum, just on the edge of hearing. Like the echo of a song that had once filled the cosmos, long ago. He closed his eyes and let himself drift with it. There was no urgency, only wonder. The loom, the archives, the quiet pull of starlight memories. They would wait. All things did, out here among the drift of stars. And soon, when he was ready, he would begin his journey. Not for answers, but for the music. The next morning, or what passed for morning aboard Ariadne 9, was peaceful as always. The lights brightened in slow gradients, mimicking a slow dawn. The station's central AI offered its usual soft greeting. "Good morning, Kael. Ambient temperature optimal. All systems nominal." Kael stood at the viewport with his tea again, but his gaze wasn't on Highland's swirled clouds this time. It lingered on the stars beyond, clusters and threads of light that stretched toward unknown corners of the galaxy. He'd made his decision. He would leave Ariadne 9. Not to abandon it, but to follow the message, to seek what the archives now called an active thread. In the archive's records, these threads were exceedingly rare, memory traces that grew restless. They didn't simply store, they called, guided, pulled. It was believed by some of the ancient scholars that a memory with purpose could weave itself into fate. Kael's preparations were simple. He packed a few personal items, a small tool set, the green crystal carefully cushioned in a stasis case, and a modest satchel of nutrient packs. His ship, the Sable Wake, was docked quietly in the hangar, long unused but lovingly maintained. Before he left, he visited the archive chamber one last time. "I'll return," he said aloud, though no one was there to hear. I think this is part of your story too." The loom's lights pulsed softly, as if in agreement. He entered the Sable Wake and settled into the pilot's cradle. The navigation systems came online with a peaceful hum, and the forward panels unfolded like petals. Starlight poured into the cabin. "Course?" The voice of the ship's AI, Ori, asked gently. Kael reached out and placed the green crystal into the console's cradle. "Follow the thread," he said. There was no sudden acceleration, no violent break from the station's orbit. Instead, the ship slid quietly into the drift, as though it had always meant to leave, as though it had waited patiently for this moment. Ariadne 9 grew small behind him, a ring of gold and pearl suspended above a sleeping planet, and before him endless space and the shimmering path of quiet stars. The hum returned again, just faintly, through the console. A familiar note, a sound like longing, wrapped in light. Kael leaned back, breathed deep, and let himself begin to dream. Awake this time, the Sable Wake drifted through the Veil sector, an expanse of shimmering dust clouds, pale and translucent like spun sugar. The stars were faint here, their light softened by ionized vapors that glowed a calming mauve. Ori's voice, soft and androgynous, broke the long silence. Incoming transmission, passive band. Language, route galactic. Source, drifting habitat.
Signature, Ellurien S. Lanterne.
Kael leaned forward. Put it through. There was no voice, just a melodic chime, familiar yet unplaceable, like the hum of the green crystal, but older, more distant. The tone rang 3 times, then faded into silence. Ori blinked a soft blue across the display. Location marked. Signal pattern matches the crystal. Kael smiled faintly. Take us in, then. The habitat came into view slowly. A floating city of glass tethered loosely to the edge of a silent asteroid. It shimmered like a bubble suspended in dark water, built of curved bridges, domed towers, and cascading gardens preserved in vacuum. It had no engines, no visible source of power. It simply hovered. They docked at one of the outer petals, a long transparent arch that extended toward open space. As Kael stepped through the airlock, gravity shifted gently beneath his feet. The station's systems still functioned, barely. Lights flickered like candle flames, and temperature regulators kept the air pleasantly cool. The city was silent, and yet it didn't feel abandoned. The corridors were lined with crystalline script, etched into the walls in spiraling patterns. Kael recognized fragments, ancient symbols used by early archivists to encode memories. These weren't just decorations. This entire city was a living record. As he walked, he passed towering sculptures of translucent stone. Each one seemed to shift slightly in the corner of his vision, statues that almost breathed. Then he reached the heart chamber. It was a circular hall surrounded by columns of clear crystal, and in the center floated a platform, a pedestal like the loom back on Ariadne 9. And resting on it was a single, faintly glowing object, a crystal twin. Not green, but a gentle amber, like the glow of dusk. It pulsed slowly, rhythmically, and as Kael approached, it resonated with his own crystal still stored in the wake. The pedestal activated. A voice filled the chamber, not spoken, but sung into the very walls. An echo of thought, wrapped in melody. The waking song begins not with sound, but silence. Seek the hollow choir. Follow the oldest note. It waits beneath the ghost ring of Miral. The light dimmed again. Kael stood in quiet awe, the message vibrating gently through his bones. The hollow choir, the ghost ring of Miral. He had more questions now than ever before, but they no longer felt heavy. They were music in waiting, notes to be discovered. He left the chamber slowly, pausing only to run his hand across the amber crystal in thanks. Outside, stars blinked patiently. The journey had just begun. It took 3 standard days to reach Miral. The star itself had long since collapsed, leaving behind a shimmering ghost ring, a wide band of debris, ice, and fractured light that spun endlessly in the dark. It was neither asteroid field nor planetary ring, but something in between, the remnants of a shattered world and the echo of a melody that had once held it together. Ori brought the sable wake into a slow, drifting orbit along the outer rim of the ring. No active transmissions, Ori said gently, but there is resonance. Kael had been listening too. The crystal on the console glowed a muted gold now, humming in long, low tones, like a throat singing from deep within the cosmos. And then, another note joined it. It didn't come from the ship. It didn't come from the archive crystal. It came from outside. He leaned toward the viewscreen. Amid the icy dust and glimmering debris, he saw movement slow, graceful. A collection of objects drifting in formation, faintly glowing in a faint pink hue. They looked like cloaked figures, drifting without propulsion, each one trailing long silken veils that shimmered with stardust. Ori, what am I seeing? Matching partial references. The hollow choir.
No biological signature.
No heat. Projected composition. Harmonic crystal lattice. Possibly sentient. Kael's breath caught. He had heard stories of the hollow choir, a myth among ancient archivists. Not people, not machines, but something in between. Constructs that remembered songs of lost civilizations, keepers of what could no longer be spoken in words. And now they sang. The sound filtered through the sable wake's hull. Not as sound, but as vibration, gentle and hypnotic. The amber crystal on the console glowed brighter, and Kael felt his eyelids grow heavy, not from exhaustion, but from calm. Prepare the docking capsule, he whispered. I'm going in. The capsule drifted silently into the heart of the ghost ring, threading through icy fragments and glittering stone. The figures of the hollow choir continued to float in formation, unbothered by his presence. As Kael drew closer, their song shifted, rising, harmonizing, soft and infinite. One of them turned. It had no face, only light beneath a crystalline hood. It drifted forward and extended an arm of pale silver thread. In its hand, a memory crystal. Kael reached out and accepted it without hesitation. The moment he touched it, he felt the music, not with ears but with memory. It wasn't just a recording. It was an invitation. He closed his eyes. A vision bloomed behind his thoughts. He stood on a long-forgotten world, once bathed in gold suns. A city of sound, of voices raised in unison, filled his senses. A cathedral without walls, where music kept time and memory. But the city was dying. The stars had dimmed. The song had been broken. Find the final note. A voice whispered, ancient and kind. Only when the waking song is whole shall the loom open the path. Kael opened his eyes. The hollow choir was retreating now, slowly folding back into the dust of Miral's ring. The memory crystal still pulsed in his hand. He returned to the capsule and drifted quietly back to the wake. As he re-entered the ship, Ori greeted him with a soft chime. Was it beautiful? Kael smiled faintly. "Yes," he said, "and it's not finished." Ori plotted the next course while Kael rested. The ship's interior lights dimmed to a soft cerulean and gentle tones, based on the choir's harmonics, played on a quiet loop as the sable wake coasted through folded space. Time lost meaning in transit. Kael dreamed of cities made of glass notes and staircases that rang with every step. When he woke, the ship was already in orbit. "Arrival complete," Ori said, voice a whisper. "Designate Mare Theta 4. Common name, Echo Moon." Kael stood slowly, eyes still adjusting to the new starfield. Below him floated a silver-gray moon, etched with deep canyons and glowing veins of bioluminescent crystal. The archives described it only in fragments. A world once used as a memory reservoir, abandoned centuries ago. "Atmosphere is thin, but breathable," Ori added. "Surface contains trace resonant minerals. Early archive symbols detected, etched into canyon walls." Kael descended alone. The shuttle touched down on a soft bed of dust, the sky above tinged lavender, scattered with 3 pale suns. The air hummed faintly with static, not unpleasant, more like the distant whisper of a waterfall, slowed to a crawl. He began his walk into the nearest canyon, guided by the faint pulses of the crystal in his satchel. As he moved, he noticed something peculiar. Every time he spoke or even exhaled, his voice came back to him, not as an echo, but as a memory. His words returned warped gently, as though whispered by someone else. Not copied, but remembered. Echo Moon didn't reflect sound. It held it, learned it, and offered it back in its own voice. Kael slowed his steps and listened. Footsteps echoed ahead, but he hadn't taken them yet. He turned a corner in the canyon, heart calm but curious, and found a small circular clearing. A bowl of stone etched with spiraling archive sigils. At its center, a single pillar rose, and atop it, a dull red crystal pulsed slowly. He placed his palm on it. The air shifted. The canyon began to sing. Hundreds, maybe thousands of voices, layered in soft harmony, filled the space. They did not cry out. They did not weep. They remembered. He heard lullabies in alien languages, fragments of long-forgotten prayers, whispered poems, and the echoes of old laughter. And then, softly, gently, "When the third note is found, the sleeper shall wake." Kael opened his eyes. The red crystal now glowed brighter, and his green and amber crystals hummed gently in response. 3 tones, 3 notes of the waking song. He sat cross-legged at the edge of the clearing, closed his eyes once more, and let the song carry him. Time passed differently here. The canyon sang, and Kael rested, comforted, surrounded, and quietly watched by the echoes of stars long gone. Kael departed Echo Moon in silence. The red crystal now sat with the others, each tucked into a velvet-lined tray beside the console. Ori adjusted their tone harmonics to keep them in balance, a quiet triad that pulsed through the ship like a heartbeat. "Destination unknown," Ori said softly. "No signal threads remain active." Kael stared at the star map, its rivers of light blinking slowly, patiently. They had followed memory, music. Now they had to follow something else. "Let's drift," Kael murmured. And so they did. The sable wake slowed its navigation systems and allowed the surrounding current of solar winds and magnetic fields to carry it, gently, like a leaf upon a dream. Kael made tea. He sat by the observation dome and watched passing debris flicker in the starlight like ancient embers. Hours passed, maybe days, until Ori spoke. "Unregistered vessel ahead. Minimal energy signature. Trajectory, inert. No distress beacon." Kael leaned forward. Suspended in the dark, like a ship sunken in the depths of space, was a long-forgotten transport craft. Its hull cracked, but its structure miraculously intact. Scorch marks ran along its flanks. The nameplate had faded, leaving only 2 readable characters, E7. As Kael approached in the docking capsule, something tugged at his thoughts. Not danger, something quieter. A breath, a sleeping presence. He entered through the broken side hatch and found the interior dim, coated in a thin layer of frost. Panels blinked slowly, some alive, some dreaming, and in the center of the crew pod, strapped into the reclining cradle, lay a woman, or the dream of one. Her chest rose and fell steadily, though every other system in the pod was long dead. Her flight suit, though aged, bore the symbol of the first archive. Her hair floated freely, long and silver, like the trails of a comet. She's still dreaming, Kael realized. He scanned the interface. The stasis pod had failed centuries ago. She should not have survived. And yet the ship E7 had held her, cradled her, waited, just above her head, etched into the glass. A symbol. Kael recognized it. It matched the third glyph from Echo Moon. He stepped back, breath caught, and the 3 crystals in his satchel began to hum. Together, softly, slowly. Their notes aligned, and a 4th tone, a harmony he hadn't heard before, emerged from the quiet. The woman opened her eyes, not startled, just awake. She looked at Kael with steady, silver-flecked eyes, as though she already knew him. "Are you the one who followed the notes?" she asked, her voice a whisper across time. Kael nodded slowly. "I dreamed someone would come," she said, smiling gently. "And I've held the 4th piece. Would you like to hear it?" He knelt beside the cradle and took her hand. The 4th note rose into the dark. A sound like wind passing through woven branches, gentle and knowing. It wrapped around the others like a thread pulled taut. And somewhere in the universe, something stirred. The woman's name was Lyra. As her system slowly rebooted, she and Kael shared stories in quiet tones, the kind that float like whispers in the vast stillness of space. She told him of her mission, a keeper of the Starlight Archives, sent centuries ago to protect the final notes of the waking song. Her ship, E7, had drifted into silence after a catastrophic energy surge fractured nearby star systems. The song had been lost, but she carried the hope of its return. Together, their crystals pulsed in a steady rhythm, weaving a melody that spoke of ancient times and dreams yet to be dreamed. The 5th note, Lyra whispered, tracing the curve of an old star map, lies in the heart of the shimmering nebula, a place where light folds back on itself, hiding secrets beneath waves of starlight. Kael nodded, feeling the warmth of companionship settle gently within him. The quiet hum of the ship was now a duet, a soft, perfect harmony. Ori plotted the course, and the sable wake slipped forward, carried by gentle cosmic currents. As they traveled, Lyra shared more memories stored within her ship, holographic tapestries of forgotten worlds, gardens that bloomed be. The nebula approached, a swirling mass of violet and silver, like liquid light folded over ancient shadows. "Almost there," Ori murmured. Kael reached out and placed his hand over the 3 glowing crystals, now warm and alive in his palm. The waking song was nearly complete, and as the sable wake entered the nebula's embrace, the gentle music of stars whispered a lullaby, soft as a breath, promising rest and wonder beyond the edges of waking. The sable wake drifted deeper into the shimmering nebula, a vast cloud of cosmic dust and light that folded upon itself like the gentle petals of a celestial flower. Shades of violet, silver, and pale blue swirled around the ship, bathing everything in a soft, otherworldly glow. Outside the observation dome, tendrils of starlight curled and stretched, casting dancing shadows that felt more like gentle caresses than anything threatening. The air within the ship seemed to hum with anticipation, a quiet pulse that matched the rhythm of the 3 glowing crystals in Kael's satchel. Lyra stood beside him, her silver-flecked eyes reflecting the nebula's glow. "The final note should be here," she said softly. "The song is hidden within the light itself." Kael nodded, feeling the familiar warmth of the crystals. Their combined hum grew louder, resonating with the nebula's energy as if responding to an ancient call. Ori's voice was calm, almost reverent, scanning for harmonic frequencies. The ship's sensors began to pick up faint signals, vibrations woven into the very fabric of the nebula's light. They weren't sounds in the usual sense, but intricate patterns of energy, delicate and complex. Kael closed his eyes, letting the subtle waves wash over him. In the silence, a melody emerged, a gentle, shimmering tune that seemed to rise from the depths of space itself. He reached into his satchel and placed the 3 crystals together on the console. Their lights blended into a soft, golden glow. Suddenly, the ship's systems reacted. The crystals pulsed in unison, and the melody grew stronger, weaving through the ship's corridors and filling every corner with warmth and light. A new crystal materialized on the pedestal before them, glowing with a pure, radiant blue. This was the final note, the completion of the waking song. Lyra smiled, a look of peaceful fulfillment on her face. The song is whole. As the 4 crystals resonated together, the memory loom in the center of the sable wake activated, casting a gentle light that enveloped the room. Kael felt a deep calm settle over him, a sense of completion and rest. The song of the stars had been restored, and as the sable wake floated peacefully in the heart of the nebula, Kael and Lyra closed their eyes, drifting into a serene, endless dream. The sable wake rested quietly in the heart of the shimmering nebula. Around it, the gentle folds of light pulsed softly, like the slow breathing of a sleeping giant. Kael and Lyra sat side by side in the observation dome, watching the dance of starlight spill across the endless dark. The 4 crystals shimmered softly on the console, a perfect harmony of memory and song. "We found the waking song," Kael whispered, his voice barely more than a breath. "Yes," Lyra replied, her smile warm and gentle. "And now it can rest, until the stars call it again." Outside, the nebula hummed with quiet life, waves of light rolling softly like a lullaby meant for the entire cosmos. Kael closed his eyes, feeling the tender pulse of the crystals echo within his own heartbeat. The song wrapped around him like a soft blanket, soothing and endless. In this moment, there was nothing but peace, a timeless stillness where dreams and stars mingled, and every whispered note carried the promise of rest. And as the gentle music of the universe played on, the sable wake drifted forever onward, a quiet guardian of ancient memories and the endless lullaby of the stars.